Ever think you've got a foolproof plan? Like, really foolproof? Well, prepare to meet the folks who redefined epic fail at the US border. We're not talking about forgetting to declare an extra bottle of duty-free. We're diving into a world of cocaine-stuffed guitars, scorpion-filled Bibles, and fake pregnant bellies that were just, well, pregnant with bad ideas. Get ready, because some of these smuggling attempts are so bizarre, so audacious, you'll wonder if these people were trying to get caught. Or maybe they just really wanted that extra avocado. 1. Our first genius decided their guitar wasn't just for campfire sing-alongs, but for holding a stash of cocaine. So they carved it out, turning a perfectly good instrument into a high-risk delivery system. Smart, huh? Except, a guitar suddenly weighing as much as a small engine tends to raise a few flags. When customs officials, who probably know what a guitar should weigh, picked it up, it wasn't Stairway to Heaven they heard, but more like the clang of prison doors. His solo career ended on a very flat note. 2. Next, some tech wizard thought they'd cracked the code, hollow out a flat-screen TV, stuff it with fake cash. Modern problems, modern smuggling, right? Only one tiny issue with this brilliant scheme: the TV didn't actually turn on. Customs officers, surprisingly not fooled by the "it's just an art installation" defense, found a dead, heavy TV a bit suspicious. When they opened it up, it wasn't showing reruns, it was showing them a one-way ticket to federal court. Bad reception, great conviction. 3. Then we have the amateur zoologist who tried to sneak a live parrot into the US by stuffing it in their jacket. Maybe they thought the bird would appreciate the close personal contact. But parrots, as it turns out, aren't big on stealth missions, especially when they can't breathe. Just as our smuggler was probably congratulating themselves, the bird let out a squawk that could shatter glass, and dreams of a successful crime. Polly didn't just want a cracker. Polly became Exhibit A. 4. This next one is a real showstopper. A traveler waltzed in with a fake pregnant belly, not expecting a baby, but expecting to get rich off the drugs hidden inside. You gotta admire the nerve, if not the IQ. The plan might have even worked if the expectant smuggler hadn't started sweating like they were trying to win a marathon when customs asked a few simple questions. That special delivery was intercepted, and the only thing they ended up delivering was themselves to the authorities. Labor and indictment. 5. And for our first catastrophe, someone tried the classic kitty in a carry-on. They tucked their furry friend into an oversized purse, probably promising it a life of luxury and unlimited tuna. But cats, being cats, have their own ideas about travel arrangements. Right as they sailed past customs, feeling like a master spy, the cat let out a meow loud enough to summon every dog in a 3-county radius. The officer unzipped the bag, and instead of finding Chanel No. 5, found a very annoyed, very illegal feline. Anything to declare? Just a furry little problem with federal law. 6. Some enterprising individual decided the common apple wasn't nearly pretentious enough, so they took hundreds of them and gave them a Midas touch with gold spray paint. It wasn't for an avant-garde art installation or a very tacky fruit bowl. Customs officers, probably wondering if they'd stumbled upon the world's most inefficient gold smuggling operation, quickly realized this wasn't just about aesthetics. Beneath that dubious golden veneer, the apples were hollowed out and ingeniously stuffed with stolen watches. Perhaps they were hoping this fruit-based felony would be a timeless classic of smuggling. Instead, it was just a rotten idea from the core, proving that not all that glitters is gold, especially when it smells faintly of Granny Smith and desperation. 7. In a bizarre fusion of high fashion and low-level entomology, one traveler was caught sporting an unusually large and ornate belt buckle. This wasn't just a statement piece, it was a mobile insectarium. Upon closer inspection via an X-ray scan, because who wouldn't X-ray a belt buckle that looks like it could double as a dinner plate? Officers discovered tiny custom-built compartments housing live beetles. Yes, you read that correctly. Live, wriggling beetles, presumably for personal enjoyment or a very niche black market. The plan unraveled when the beetles, perhaps tired of their cramped commute, started shifting noticeably. I suppose they wanted to keep their 6-legged friends close, but the authorities found this accessory genuinely bugged them. 8. Here's a scheme that tugs at the heartstrings before snapping them with cynicism, using an innocent child as an unwitting accomplice in smuggling rare coins. The mastermind behind this operation thought that stashing valuable numismatic treasures in a brightly colored cartoon backpack would be the height of subterfuge. After all, who would suspect little Timmy of being a key player in an international coin smuggling ring? The critical flaw in this otherwise genius plan, the backpack, laden with enough rare metal to fund a small rebellion, was so astonishingly heavy that the poor child couldn't even lift it. That's not suspicious at all, is it? Customs officers, noticing the child straining like Atlas, holding up a SpongeBob-themed world, quickly uncovered the miniature Fort Knox. Guess that plan didn't have much currency and resulted in a very awkward family vacation. 9. And now for a tale that redefines slippery customer. A live eel, artfully and rather cruelly concealed within a standard plastic water bottle. Yes, someone looked at an eel, looked at a bottle of Evian, and thought, perfect. This aspiring aquatic smuggler attempted to transport their slithery contraband by simply, well, stuffing it in there. The plan, as you might expect with most plans involving confining agitated wildlife in inappropriate containers, began to unravel when the eel, understandably displeased with its new, transparent prison, commenced a vigorous wriggling protest. The bottle started to dance a jig on the conveyor belt. Customs officers were, shall we say, less than thrilled to discover this uninvited, slimy, and highly illegal passenger. That's one way to ensure your hydration is also an adventure, and a one-way ticket to an interview room. 10. Have you ever picked up a watermelon and thought, wow, this feels like it's secretly a cannonball? Customs officers had that exact experience. A traveler with either incredible patience or a worrying amount of free time meticulously hollowed out a large watermelon, packed its cavity with illegal substances, and then, with the delicate skill of a surgeon performing a transplant on a grape, resealed it. The execution was almost a masterpiece of deception, except for the tiny insignificant detail that the watermelon now weighed approximately twice as much as any naturally occurring fruit of its kind. That conspicuous, uneven distribution of weight was a dead giveaway. Next time, maybe just stick to a seedless variety for the picnic and leave the felony fruit at home. A truly melancholy end to that endeavor. 11. Easter came with a side of federal charges for one smuggler who believed a hollow chocolate bunny was the ideal clandestine courier for a stash of diamonds. They carefully packed the sparkling gems inside the confectionery critter, presumably taking great care not to smudge the chocolate, and then resealed it, hoping it would pass muster as just another sugary seasonal treat. But customs officers, perhaps possessing a sixth sense for unusually dense chocolate, or maybe just noticing the bunny didn't quite hop right, found it suspiciously weighty. Their brilliant plan to deliver a sparkling surprise melted faster than chocolate left on a dashboard in July. Sweet dreams of riches turned into a rather bitter reality. 12. This aspiring Tour de France champion, or perhaps just a very ambitious smuggler, decided to try a different kind of doping. They meticulously packed illegal ivory into the hollow frame of a bicycle, envisioning themselves peddling their contraband smoothly past customs. It was an ingenious idea if it weren't for the unavoidable laws of physics. The bike, now laden with dense, illicit material, suddenly possessed the heft of a small motorcycle. Officers, noticing the rider struggling more than a fish on, well, a bicycle, and probably wheezing like an old steam engine, quickly became suspicious and uncovered the scheme. Looks like that particular plan didn't have the legs for the long haul and crashed before the finish line. 13. Someone had the brilliant idea to improve a perfectly good bottle of wine. Their method? Empty out the actual wine, the horror, and refill the bottle with valuable gold dust. They then carefully resealed the bottle, aiming for that sophisticated, untouched vintage aesthetic. The plan quickly went sour, much like a cheap wine left open too long, when customs officers, possibly with a discerning palate for density and weight distribution, noticed the bottle felt distinctly wrong. Heavier at the bottom, perhaps with a suspicious shimmer. Talk about a vintage that definitely wasn't aged to perfection but was certainly heading for confiscation. A truly unfortunate outcome for our would-be Goldfinger. 14. Taking the phrase, coloring outside the lines to a whole new felonious dimension. A creative smuggler hollowed out individual crayons and painstakingly filled each one with pills. They then repackaged the box to look brand new and factory sealed, probably hoping no one would question the artistic integrity of a box of Crayolas. However, astute customs officers, perhaps noticing the crayons felt a bit off, or didn't quite make that satisfying snap when broken, or maybe just had a hunch, uncovered the pharmaceutical rainbow hidden within. Guess their artistic endeavors led straight to a felony charge and a very bleak color palette for their future. 15. If at first your smuggling attempt doesn't succeed, try stuffing diamonds into a pair of binoculars. That seemed to be the guiding principle for this particular optimist. They carefully packed precious gems into the optical instrument, perhaps hoping to get a crystal-clear view of a successful crime and a luxurious future. However, the significantly increased weight of the binoculars, now more akin to small dumbbells, tipped off the ever-vigilant customs officials. A quick trip through the X-ray machine revealed the sparkling and highly illegal contents. They really didn't see that arrest coming, did they? Their vision of riches became rather blurry. 16. For a smile that's both blindingly bright and glaringly illegal, one enterprising smuggler emptied out a standard tube of toothpaste and meticulously replaced its minty contents with tiny, valuable diamonds. They even went to the trouble of resealing it to look factory fresh and utterly innocuous. But customs officers, perhaps noticing the tube felt more like a lead weight than a source of dental hygiene, or maybe it just didn't squish right, weren't fooled by this sparkling subterfuge. That plan to bring in some brilliance got squeezed out pretty quickly. Guess they brushed with the law and the law had a stronger grip. 17. This next attempt is a bit hairy, and by a bit, I mean a lot. A traveler was intercepted with a suitcase stuffed entirely, and rather alarmingly, with wigs made from unprocessed human hair. We're talking a veritable mountain of detached tresses. Customs officials understandably found the sheer quantity and the nature of the cargo rather suspicious. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that the hair wasn't properly declared, leading one to wonder about its origin and intended destination. Maybe they were planning to open a very niche, very sudden, and very large wig emporium? Whatever the plan, it got a very close shave from the authorities. Hair today, evidence tomorrow, and a lot of explaining to do. 18. Some aspiring aeronautical engineer with a criminal bent decided to disguise a sophisticated and probably expensive drone as a simple children's toy plane. They likely figured that no customs officer would look twice at what appeared to be a kid's plaything. It might have even soared to success, if not for one particularly observant officer who noticed that the toy had far too many antennas, suspiciously advanced-looking rotors, and generally looked like it could carry a small payload rather than just delight a child. High hopes for this aerial smuggling attempt were grounded, very, very fast. No fly zone for that idea. 19. And now, for a truly biblical level of what on earth? A smuggler, in a move that redefines sacrilege, hollowed out a Bible. Not for quiet contemplation, secret messages, or even a flask, but to pack it with live scorpions. Yes, you read that correctly. Live, venomous scorpions. Apparently, these 8-legged agents of alarm were destined for the exotic pet market, presumably for collectors who find kittens too mainstream. The unholy plan came crawling to an abrupt halt when one of the scorpions, perhaps seeking a less confined spiritual space, made a break for it during the customs inspection, likely giving the officer a near-religious experience of terror. That's one way to make scripture truly, unforgettably terrifying. 20. In a move that screams, "I've watched far too many spy movies and understood none of them," someone thought they could outsmart modern airport security by stashing a significant quantity of drugs inside the casing of a laptop computer. The glaring problem with this high-tech heist? Laptops, as a general rule, need to actually turn on to appear legitimate. When this particular device remained stubbornly lifeless, refusing to boot up despite increasingly frantic clicks, and subsequent X-rays revealed more than just microchips and a battery, the sophisticated charade was over. Their plan crashed harder than Windows Vista on a bad day, and a blue screen of doom was the least of their worries. 21. This smuggler attempted a dazzling feat of misdirection, trying to lose their contraband in plain sight by mixing rare, valuable pearls with a large bag of colorful, common marbles. A whole sack of them, shimmering and clacking. They probably hoped the sheer volume of shiny, distracting glass orbs would make the precious pearls blend in seamlessly. Customs officers, however, are not easily distracted by shiny objects. Well, not that easily. They decided to take a closer look when they noticed the bag was sealed with heavy-duty industrial tape. Not exactly standard packaging for a child's toy. Turns out, they found some real pearls of wisdom in there, along with a hefty felony charge for the not-so-clever collector. 22. Coffee aficionados, you might want to sit down for this one, and perhaps clutch your favorite mug protectively. A traveler attempted to conceal valuable pearls by painstakingly, and one can only imagine tediously, inserting them inside individual coffee beans. Each bean was then carefully resealed to avoid suspicion. The sheer dedication to this caffeinated crime is almost admirable, if profoundly misguided and ultimately futile. But customs officers, perhaps equipped with a nose for more than just a good Arabica roast, or maybe just noticing the bag felt unusually heavy for its size, smelled something fishy. That's one way to ensure your morning brew comes with a side of federal indictment. An expensive and rather crunchy cup indeed. 23. Comfort was clearly not a priority for this next ambitious smuggler, who made the rather unusual decision to strap a live turtle to their stomach and then attempt to conceal it with layers of clothing. Perhaps they were going for the unusually lumpy but hopefully inconspicuous human look. Customs officers, however, are professionally trained to notice unusual lumps, bulges, and general anatomical weirdness. The turtle, thankfully, was found to be unharmed by its uncomfortable journey. But the smugglers' plan to sneak in a shelled companion definitely hit a solid wall. Shell shock for the smuggler, that is, and a rather bewildered turtle. 24. Never judge a book by its cover, or in this particular case, a teddy bear by its cute and cuddly exterior. A seemingly innocent, fluffy teddy bear, the kind you'd win at a carnival, turned out to be a Trojan horse for a variety of illegal items. Its original soft stuffing had been entirely replaced with contraband, but the amateurish, hasty stitching job around its seams was a dead giveaway to the observant customs officer. Imagine the awkwardness of that conversation. "Sir, why does your bear feel like it's filled with, well, not fluff, and also, why does it have a suspiciously fresh surgical scar?" Fluffy went from being a childhood friend to Exhibit A in a criminal case real quick. 25. Taking the classic false bottom suitcase trope to a new, terrifying, and frankly, nightmarish level, this smuggler decided to pack live scorpions into a specially constructed hidden compartment in their luggage. The plan was almost perfect in its audacity, except for the minor yet crucial detail that scorpions are living creatures with a well-documented penchant for exploring and not staying put. One particularly adventurous arachnid managed to escape its confines and gave a customs officer the kind of surprise that usually involves a lot of screaming and possibly jumping onto a chair. A sting operation, in the most literal and painful sense of the phrase. 26. Trying to orchestrate a symphony of crime or perhaps just a very dissonant chord, a smuggler hid a substantial amount of counterfeit bills inside a hollowed-out violin. It might have been a high note for their illegal enterprise, a crescendo of criminal cunning, if they hadn't packed it so incredibly full of fake cash that the instrument could no longer produce a single sound, musical or otherwise. Let's just say their performance at the customs checkpoint didn't earn them a standing ovation, but it did get them a captive audience with the authorities and a lengthy intermission in a federal facility. 27. This traveler attempted to take a surreptitious step towards illicit riches by ingeniously, or so they thought, using hollowed-out flip-flop soles to hide a collection of rare and presumably illegal plant seeds. They probably hoped that no one would pay close attention to their casual beachwear, but the unusual, unexpected weight of the sandals tripped them up, both literally and figuratively. Officers, noticing that the flip-flops had more heft than a pair of steel-toed work boots, decided to investigate further and discovered the hidden botanical cargo. That's what you call a major misstep on the path to prosperity. 28. Here's a fishy tale that will make you question your next seafood dinner. A traveler attempted to smuggle a consignment of cell phones by artfully stuffing them inside several frozen fish. Each phone was carefully wrapped in protective plastic, inserted into a fish's belly cavity, and then the whole ensemble was deep frozen solid to maintain its form. Customs officials, however, noticed that these particular fish looked suspiciously pregnant, and not with roe. They proceeded to crack the case, or rather, the fish, wide open. I'm just a very big fan of technologically advanced seafood. Probably didn't fly as a convincing excuse with the authorities. 29. This next attempt floats in on a cloud of criminal creativity and questionable physics. A smuggler filled a cheerful bouquet of helium balloons, not just with the standard lighter-than-air gas, but also with a significant quantity of pills. A festive, almost celebratory way to transport narcotics, one might argue. Unfortunately for them, the added weight of the illicit pharmaceuticals meant the balloons didn't quite float with the expected buoyancy and cheerfulness. Officers quickly spotted the droopy, underperforming party favors. This particular celebration got deflated, very fast, along with the smuggler's hopes. 30. Someone clearly thought a common coffee thermos was the perfect, inconspicuous container for smuggling a batch of valuable gold nuggets. Just another regular commuter, heading to work, enjoying their hot beverage. Absolutely nothing suspicious to see here, officer. The plan hit a rather loud and unavoidable snag when the thermos, now significantly heavier and far more metallic than your average insulated flask, set off the airport metal detectors with a vengeance. Customs officers, after recovering from the ear-splitting alarm, probably joked, "That's one heck of an expensive and rather dense cup of joe you've got there," before escorting them to a less caffeinated environment. 31. This particular smuggler took the well-worn phrase, "sweet and dangerous," to an entirely new and literal level. They painstakingly and meticulously hollowed out individual chocolates from a fancy box, and then carefully filled each delicate candy shell with illegal pills. The chocolates were then resealed to look untouched and utterly tempting. However, customs officers, perhaps possessing a super sniffer for suspicious sweets, or just noticing the box rattled a bit too much, grew wary when the chocolates didn't quite smell right, or perhaps felt unusually heavy. Their ingenious plan to sugarcoat their crime melted under the heat of scrutiny. 32. The humble French baguette. Perfect with a smear of butter, ideal for dipping in soup, and apparently, according to one inventive smuggler, the perfect clandestine hiding spot for a stash of pills. This culinary criminal carefully removed the bread's fluffy innards, stuffed the hollowed-out cavity with their illicit pharmaceutical cargo, and then, with questionable artistry, resealed the crusty ends with glue. But the resulting loaf possessed an odd, unnatural texture, and probably weighed considerably more than your average sourdough starter. Customs found this attempt to be thoroughly half-baked, and the smuggler's plans were toast. 33. Prepare for an anecdote that crawls straight out of a horror movie and into customs. A passenger, presumably with nerves of steel or a complete lack of common sense, attempted to bring 200 live tarantulas into the U.S. These weren't tiny, harmless spiders. These were tarantulas, carefully taped inside their jacket and various bags. 200 of them. Things got predictably hairy and alarmingly eight-leggedy when one of these charming, fuzzy creatures made a bold break for freedom right at the customs checkpoint. Apparently, they were destined for the booming exotic pet enthusiast market. Honestly, if you're that passionately into tarantulas, isn't one or two enough to satisfy the craving? This was less smuggling, more an arachnid invasion. 34. If a swarm of tarantulas wasn't enough to make your skin crawl, how about a single determined live crab, making a break for it from a handbag? A traveler thought they could sneak this crustacean delicacy, or pet, through customs by carefully wrapping it in damp towels and placing it discreetly in their handbag. The crab, however, evidently had other plans for its afternoon. Probably not enjoying its makeshift, mobile, and rather cramped spa treatment, it decided it had endured enough and started vigorously clawing its way out of the bag right during the customs inspection. That's one way to get pinched by the authorities, and possibly by the crab itself. 35. Faking an injury to commit a crime? It's a tale as old as time, and often as flimsy as the props involved. A traveler presented themselves at customs sporting a rather conspicuous fake arm cast, not because of a clumsy accident or a daring sporting endeavor, but to utilize its hollow interior for hiding a stash of illegal pills. The plan began to fall apart like cheap plaster when eagle-eyed officers noticed that the cast looked less like a professional medical device and more like a poorly executed arts and crafts project from a particularly untalented student. Turns out, their sob story about the injury was about as convincing and structurally sound as the cast itself. 36. This next smuggling attempt is as stomach-churning as it sounds, so brace yourselves. A traveler, in a move that defies all logic and basic hygiene, actually baked live cockroaches into a cake to avoid detection. Let that truly horrifying image sink in for a moment. Live cockroaches in a cake. They presumably hoped that no customs officer would want to inspect such a dubious confection too closely, or perhaps even slice into it. But customs officers, perhaps alerted by a faint skittering sound emanating from the dessert, or just a general aura of profound culinary wrongness, uncovered the crawling, baked-in secret. Talk about a cake that absolutely no one wants a slice of, ever. That's a recipe for disaster, and probably a lifetime of therapy for the inspecting officer. 37. Someone out there genuinely believed that hiding stacks of cash inside a standard car tire was a Michelin star idea for successful smuggling. What could possibly go wrong with that plan? Well, for starters, car tires filled with wads of paper money tend to be unusually heavy, handle poorly, and probably don't offer the smoothest or quietest ride. Officers, growing suspicious of the spare tire that seemed to weigh more than the actual car it belonged to, quickly moved to investigate and, predictably, deflated that particular criminal enterprise on the spot. Their get-rich-quick scheme went flat. 38. We're back to our eight-legged nightmare fuel friends. In a variation on a terrifying theme, another traveler decided to pack live tarantulas into the various zippered compartments and pockets of a standard laptop case. They probably hoped that the professional, business-like appearance of the case would lend an air of legitimacy and deflect any unwanted scrutiny. The tarantulas, however, were not content with their assigned seating in the business class section of the bag. One adventurous arachnid escaped during the inspection process, leading to the subsequent discovery of its many brethren lurking within. That's not a bug in the system. That's a full-blown infestation of evidence. 39. This garden gnome wasn't just a piece of kitschy lawn decor. It was a silent ceramic guardian of a criminal enterprise. A cheerful-looking, pointy-hatted garden gnome was found to be hollowed out and dutifully guarding a stash of illegal drugs. The smuggler behind this whimsical crime likely hoped that its innocent, unassuming, and slightly creepy appearance would fool customs officers into overlooking it. But one officer, perhaps noticing that the gnome weighed significantly more than your average ceramic sentinel, or that its smile seemed a little too knowing, decided to give it a closer look. Turns out, this particular gnome had a very different and far more illicit kind of green thumb of its own. 40. Another thermos. Another spectacularly failed smuggling attempt. This time, an inventive traveler utilized the insulated container not for keeping beverages hot or cold, but for attempting to hide a quantity of illegal rare seeds. They were probably counting on the thermos's ordinary, everyday appearance to bypass any unwanted scrutiny from customs officials. However, their plan began to rattle apart when officers became suspicious. The thermos produced an odd, distinct rattling sound when handled, not quite the gentle slosh of coffee or tea. Those contraband seeds never got a chance to sprout, and neither did the smugglers' hopes of a successful run. 41. It's a toy. It's a lizard. It's a customs nightmare and a pending criminal charge. A particularly creative, if morally bankrupt, traveler attempted to pass off a collection of live lizards as harmless plastic children's toys by painstakingly painting them in bright, unnatural, and garish colors. A for effort in the arts and crafts department, but a definite F for execution and overall life choices. The elaborate ruse crumbled faster than a cheap plastic toy when one of the brightly painted toys decided to stretch its legs and start moving during the customs inspection. Nice try, but customs officials weren't playing along with that particular game. 42. Why, oh why, would someone think that carrying a live alligator in a standard backpack was a remotely good or sane idea? That's a question best left for philosophers, seasoned psychiatrists, and perhaps the alligator itself if it could talk. Customs officers, upon opening a suspicious and probably slightly damp backpack, were greeted by the sight of a young, no doubt very confused and rather annoyed alligator staring back at them. It was apparently destined for a private collector who clearly had questionable taste in carry-on companions and an even more questionable understanding of import laws. Later, gator. Much, much later, after your handler's court date. 43. Surf's up, and so is your rapidly diminishing chance of getting away with drug smuggling. A traveler arrived at customs with a custom-built surfboard that, at first glance, looked perfectly normal and ready to hit the waves. However, a trip through the X-ray machine revealed a different story. The board was ingeniously hollowed out and meticulously packed with a significant quantity of illegal substances. Officials, with a flair for dramatic understatement, reportedly dubbed it the wave of crime, though the surfer smuggler was probably feeling more like they were wiping out spectacularly in front of a very large, very unimpressed audience. Cowabunga, dude. Not today. 44. This traveler clearly fancied themselves a master of deception and engineering, installing a series of intricate, secret, false-bottom drawers within their otherwise ordinary-looking suitcase. These hidden compartments were designed to discreetly hold a number of heavy gold bars. The glaring problem? Gold is incredibly dense. The suitcase, now containing what amounted to a small portable anvil, looked far too bulky for its apparent size and weighed an absolute ton. Customs officers, who are remarkably adept at spotting luggage that flagrantly defies the laws of physics and normal baggage allowances, uncovered the hidden glittering treasure in no time. Not so golden an idea after all. 45. This particular loaf of bread was anything but the wholesome staff of life. It was more accurately described as the staff of a future federal prison sentence. A resourceful, if misguided traveler carefully hollowed out the loaf, packed the resulting cavity with valuable gold coins, and then meticulously glued the crusty ends back into place to make it appear untouched. But customs officers, perhaps noticing that the loaf weighed significantly more than a bowling ball, or that it didn't quite have the right bread-like give, found it suspiciously heavy. Their hunch paid off handsomely. For the government, that is. Someone was trying to make some serious dough, the highly illegal kind. 46. Slithering its way directly into the annals of bizarre smuggling history is this next tale. A live python, cozily and uncomfortably tucked into a long sock, which was then hidden inside a carry-on bag. The ever-vigilant TSA, during a routine, but soon-to-be very unroutine, bag check, discovered this reptilian stowaway. Needless to say, the snake, probably quite disgruntled by its cramped cottony confines and the general lack of personal space, didn't look too happy about the situation. And the smuggler? They weren't too happy about their impending charges either. That's one way to get your leg. Your baggage flagged for special attention. 47. Think a coconut is just for making piña coladas or adding a tropical flair to your dessert. Think again, especially if you're a customs officer dealing with creative smugglers. One traveler meticulously hollowed out a coconut, filled its empty shell with drugs, and then painstakingly resealed it to look perfectly natural and untouched, ready for the supermarket shelf. But customs officers, possibly possessing an uncanny, almost supernatural ability to judge the correct weight and density of various tropical fruits, found it suspiciously off. It turns out this particular coconut wasn't just carrying refreshing milk. It was carrying a highly illegal criminal plan. 48. Batter up for a spectacular felony. A smuggler, perhaps believing they were clever enough to fool everyone, thought they could hit a home run by filling a standard wooden baseball bat with various contraband items. The only significant issue with this sporting goods-themed crime? The bat, now significantly heavier than regulation and probably with a very odd weight distribution, felt more like a medieval mace or a piece of lead piping than something you'd comfortably use to hit a fastball. Customs officers, likely after attempting a tentative swing and nearly throwing their backs out, quickly investigated. Looks like that grand slam plan struck out spectacularly. 49. And finally, proving that some terrible ideas are just too compelling to only try once with scorpions, a different smuggler decided to add specially constructed false bottom compartments to their suitcase. Their chosen contraband for these hidden spaces? Live snakes. The plan, as these slithery, ill-conceived plans often do, came undone in a rather dramatic fashion when one of the snakes, evidently not a fan of confined travel, managed to escape its compartment and startled everyone at the customs checkpoint. A hysterical and highly memorable end to a truly terrible and reptilian idea. So, 49 masterclasses in smuggling stupidity. From feathered snitches to fruit-filled felonies, the creativity was there, the execution, not so much. Now, I know some of you have wilder tales from the border, or at least heard some urban legends that top these. What's the most insane smuggling attempt you've encountered or heard about? Unleash it in the comments. I'm dying to know. And hey, if this parade of criminal calamity made you chuckle, smash that like button, subscribe for more baffling facts, and maybe just declare everything next time you fly. Seriously.